the morning sun filtered softly through the steel blinds of the naval base in Virginia, casting long shadows across the quiet armory. Sergeant Amara Lewis, a poised African-American woman in her late 30s, moved with silent grace, her dust cloth gliding in deliberate circles over the scope of an M2010 sniper rifle. Her braided hair neatly tucked away, her dark eyes focused intently on the task, as if whispering secrets to the weapon she tended. As she leaned forward to polish a stubborn smudge, a stray beam of light caught the edge of her dog tag dangling from her neck. Etched faintly into the metal, barely visible but unmistakable, was the number, 2,590 meters. Across the room, Lieutenant Daniel Harris, a battle-hardened Navy SEAL with lines etched deep from years of duty, halted abruptly. His clipboard tumbled from his grip, crashing against the concrete floor with the sharp echo that pierced the stillness. His team glanced over, puzzled by their unflappable leader's sudden falter. Harris's eyes locked on Amara, his mind reeling with an unspoken question that hung heavy in the air. Why would a simple maintenance worker, hidden in the shadows of routine, bear the mark known only to the elite snipers who danced with death at impossible distances? Do you believe silent heroes still walk among us? In the wake of that echoing clatter, the armory returned to its familiar rhythm. But for Amara Lewis, life was a carefully guarded routine, a shield against the storms of her past. Officially, she was listed as a supply specialist, a title that masked her true depths, allowing her to blend into the shadows of the base. Day after day, she arrived at dawn, her steps measured and disciplined, her hands methodically tending to the weapons that others would wield in far-off battles. The scent of gun oil and polished metal was her constant companion, a reminder of duties fulfilled in silence. Yet beneath her composed exterior lay wounds that time had not fully healed. 4 years ago, while carrying their unborn child, Amara had received the devastating news. Her husband, Captain James Lewis, a fellow soldier and the love of her life, had been killed in action in Iraq. The grief consumed her, spiraling into PTSD that shattered her world. In the haze of nightmares and unrelenting sorrow, she lost custody of their daughter, little Maya, to her in-laws, who believed they could provide the stability Amara could not. "You're not fit to raise her," the judge had said, words that echoed in her mind like distant gunfire. Now Maya was 10, a girl Amara could only dream of holding again. On base, her colleagues saw none of this pain. To them, she was just the cleaner, the quiet woman in coveralls who kept the rifles spotless. "Hey, Lewis, don't forget to shine 'em up real nice," one petty officer jeered as he grabbed his gear, his laughter joined by others. "Just a cleaner, nothing more." Amara absorbed the mockery without a word, her dark eyes steady, her back straight. But if anyone looked closer, they might notice the faint outline beneath her shirt, a large eagle tattoo spreading its wings across her back, inked over an old scar from a wound that spoke of battles fought and survived. It was her symbol of resilience, a hidden emblem of the warrior she once was, and the strength she still carried in her soul. Lieutenant Harris couldn't shake the image of that etched number on Amara's dog tag, a silent thunderbolt that shattered his composure. 2,590 meters. It wasn't just a figure. It was a legend whispered in the halls of special operations, a classified record of a sniper's impossible feat that had turned the tide in a desperate battle. Classified reports, buried deep in secure files, told the tale. The soldier behind that shot, codenamed Ghost Falcon, had perished 4 years earlier in the rugged valleys of Helmand, Afghanistan, her position overrun in a fierce Taliban assault that left no survivors. But as Harris observed Amar from afar, piecing together the puzzle, doubts crept in like shadows at dusk. Her demeanor was too poised, her handling of the M2010 too intuitive, as if the rifle were an old ally rather than a tool to be cleaned. The way she adjusted the scope with effortless precision, the subtle vigilance in her eyes, it all matched the profile of Ghost Falcon, the phantom sniper whose skills had saved countless lives before vanishing into myth. Suspicion gnawed at him. This quiet woman in coveralls couldn't be a coincidence. Gathering his resolve, Harris approached her workstation, his voice low and measured amid the armory's hum. "Sergeant Lewis, a word in private, if you don't mind." Amara looked up, her heart skipping a beat, but she masked her unease with a calm nod. "About the equipment, sir? Everything's in order?" Harris pressed gently, his eyes searching hers. "Not the equipment. Something more personal. That number on your tag, it's not something you see every day." Amara deflected with practiced ease, her words a shield. "Just a memento, Lieutenant. Nothing worth discussing." But as Harris walked away, the air between them thickened with unspoken truths, and Amara felt the fragile walls of her hidden world beginning to crack, stirring a deep-seated fear that her past was calling her back from the grave. That night, as the base fell into a hush under the Virginia stars, Amara sat alone in her modest quarters, the weight of Harris's probing gaze lingering like a ghost from her past. She closed her eyes, and the memories surged back unbidden. The dusty chaos of Afghanistan, the mission in Helmand where everything shattered. She could still hear the crack of enemy fire, the desperate shouts of her spotter, Private Elijah Carter, a young man with dreams of home, cut down beside her as Taliban forces closed in. Teammates fell one by one in the onslaught, their blood staining the rocky ground. Amara had fired that legendary shot at 25-90 meters, eliminating the enemy leader and buying precious time for the Marines below. But it had cost her everything. Wounded and alone, she crawled through hostile terrain for days, only to be extracted and told the bitter truth. To protect vital secrets and sources compromised in the attack, she must remain dead to the world. Official death, they called it, a new identity, a quiet exile from the life she knew, all to safeguard the greater good.
"I don't want to return," Amara whispered to the empty room, her voice trembling with the raw ache of inner conflict. "Peace is all I have left, these routines, this silence, away from the bullets and the loss." The thought of reclaiming her old self terrified her. It meant reopening wounds that had barely scarred over, risking the fragile stability she'd built after losing James and Maya. Yet Harris's stare haunted her, piercing through her defenses, and the whispers around the base grew louder, curious murmurs from colleagues who sensed something amiss in the lieutenant's sudden interest. "What's Harris after with the cleaner?" one muttered in the mess hall. Cornered by suspicion, Amara felt the pull of her hidden strength warring with her desire for safety, knowing that ignoring the call might not keep the shadows at bay forever. The days blurred into a tense haze for Amara, her mind a battlefield of doubt and defiance, the whispers on base echoing like accusations she couldn't escape. Then, one quiet afternoon, as she sorted through her locker, her fingers brushed against an envelope she'd long forgotten, an old letter from her father, forwarded by a cousin after his passing. He had been a black veteran of Vietnam, a man who faced the sting of racial discrimination in uniform and out, yet stood tall through it all, his spirit unbroken by the prejudices that sought to diminish him. With trembling hands, Amara unfolded the yellowed paper, his familiar scrawl bringing tears to her eyes. "My dear Amara, life will try to box you in, tell you you're not enough because of your skin or your scars. But remember this, you don't need their approval. You just can't deny who you are. Your strength is your birthright, forged in the fires we've all endured. Carry it proudly, even in the silence." The words pierced her soul, a mentor's voice from beyond, reigniting a fire she'd thought extinguished. In that moment, the letter became her renewed source of strength, a beacon guiding her through the storm of uncertainty, reminding her that her true self, the warrior, the survivor, was worth reclaiming, no matter the cost. Bolstered by her father's timeless words, Amara felt a quiet resolve stirring within, a spark that propelled her through the uncertainty like a guiding light from her past. The next morning, as the armory buzzed with routine activity, Harris approached her once more, his expression a mix of determination and respect. "Lewis, I've arranged a secret marksmanship trial at an abandoned training range nearby. Off the books, no eyes on us, just you and me. I need to see if my suspicions hold water." His voice was steady, but the offer hung in the air like a crossroads, beckoning her toward the unknown. Amara's heart raced, a storm of struggle raging inside. Visions of her husband's grave, Maya's distant smile, the peace she'd clung to for so long, clashing with the pull of her true calling. She touched the edge of her shirt, feeling the eagle tattoo beneath, a reminder of the strength her father had instilled. "If I do this," she said finally, her voice firm, yet laced with caution, "you swear it stays between us? No reports, no questions, nothing that drags me back into the light." Harris nodded solemnly, sealing the pact. With that agreement, Amara stepped across the invisible threshold, leaving the safety of her hidden world behind, embracing the new challenge that would test not just her skills, but the very essence of who she had become. The abandoned training range lay shrouded in twilight, its overgrown fields and weathered targets a forgotten arena where secrets could unfold away from prying eyes. Amara arrived with the M2010 slung over her shoulder, her steps deliberate, the eagle tattoo beneath her coveralls a talisman of the strength her father had instilled. "Show me what you've got," he said simply, pointing to the distant targets at 1,200 meters, steel plates glinting under the fading sun. Amara settled into position, her body aligning instinctively with the rifle, breaths steady as she calculated wind and elevation in her mind. The first shot rang out, suppressed and sharp, striking the center with surgical precision. Then another, and another, each bullet finding its mark as if guided by an unseen hand. Harris peered through the scope, his face paling in stunned disbelief. The groupings were flawless, tighter than he had seen from even the most seasoned operators. "My God," he murmured, lowering the scope. "You're her! Ghost Falcon! The legend is alive!" Amara rose slowly, her eyes meeting his with a mix of defiance and vulnerability, the weight of revelation hanging between them like a shared burden. Word spread subtly back at the base, drawing unintended attention. A pair of younger SEALs, Petty Officers Klein and Torres, caught wind of the trial and couldn't hide their scorn. "A female black, just a cleaner thinking she's hot stuff?" Klein sneered during a briefing as they eyed Amara from across the room. "Come on, Harris, you're buying this? She's probably faked her way through everything." Torres chuckled in agreement, their words a sharp echo of the prejudices Amara's father had warned her about, cutting deep, but fueling her quiet resolve. Yet in the midst of this hostility, allies emerged from the shadows. Harris, now convinced of her truth, stood by her side with quiet conviction, his nods and subtle defenses a shield against the doubters. "She's earned her place," he told them firmly, his voice carrying the authority of experience. Joining him was Dr. Maya Brooks, the compassionate military medic with a gentle strength of her own, who had overheard the whispers and approached Amara in the armory one evening. "I've seen too many overlooked because of who they are," Brooks said softly, her hand on Amara's shoulder. "Whatever your story, you've got my support, no questions asked." Their quiet alliance became Amara's anchor, a reminder that not all battles were fought alone.
But as alliances formed, a distracting twist slithered through the ranks. A rumor that Amara had once been under investigation for treason during her time in Afghanistan. Whispers of compromised missions and questionable loyalties that painted her as a potential threat rather than a hero. "Heard she sold out her team," someone muttered in the barracks, the accusation spreading like wildfire, leaving even the audience to question. Was there truth to the shadows in her past, or was it another barrier erected by those who feared her power? Amara felt the noose tightening, her inner conflict reigniting as she touched her father's letter in her pocket, steeling herself against the storm that threatened to unravel everything she'd fought to protect. As the rumor of treason swirled like a venomous fog around the base, Amara found herself navigating a labyrinth of doubt and isolation, her allies' support a fragile thread in the gathering storm. The whispers grew into barriers, testing her resolve as she clung to her father's letter, its words a lifeline amid the injustice that mirrored the battles he had fought. But the true crisis loomed far beyond Virginia's shores, in the sun-scorched lands of Somalia, where a high-value American hostage, a dedicated aid worker named Elena Ramirez, who had devoted her life to helping war-torn communities, was held captive by ruthless militants. Multiple rescue attempts had faltered, thwarted by the compound's fortified defenses and the guards' vigilant positions, leaving the team in desperate straits, lives hanging by a thread. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture. The hostage's location was perched on elevated terrain, surrounded by open kill zones that made any direct assault a suicide mission. The only viable path forward was a last resort, a sniper of unparalleled skill, capable of delivering 7 precise shots in just 70 seconds, at ranges stretching from 1,800 to 2,000 meters, neutralizing the threats without endangering Ramirez or alerting the enemy. It was a feat that demanded not just accuracy, but an almost supernatural harmony with the weapon, the wind, and the moment. A harmony Amara knew all too well from her days as Ghost Falcon. Harris, steadfast in his belief, pushed her name forward in a closed-door briefing with the higher-ups, his voice cutting through the room's skepticism. Lewis is the one we need. She's Ghost Falcon, and her skills could turn this around. But the response was swift and cutting, laced with the same biases that had haunted Amara's career. She's black, she's a woman, her record is blank, one superior dismissed, his words echoing the deep-seated injustices that had long plagued those like her father, who served with honor only to be met with doubt. We can't risk it on someone with rumors of treason swirling around her. Harris argued fiercely, highlighting her proven trial at the range, but the refusal stood firm, a wall of prejudice that fueled a simmering frustration in the air, mirroring the audience's own sense of outrage at the unfairness that denied a hero her due.
Amara overheard fragments of the debate through Brooks, who pulled her aside in the armory, her eyes flashing with shared indignation. "They're blind to what you are," Brooks said, her tone a mix of anger and encouragement. The tension built like a gathering storm, Amara's inner world a cave of shadows where she confronted her deepest fears, the loss of James in a similar hellish landscape, the ache from Maya, the betrayal of being erased once before. She traced the eagle tattoo on her back, feeling the scar beneath, a roadmap of sacrifices made and injustices endured. This refusal wasn't just operational, it was personal, a test of her spirit, pushing her to the brink where she must decide if reclaiming her legacy was worth braving the cave's darkest depths. The injustice gnawed at her, stirring a righteous fire that whispered, perhaps it was time to prove them all wrong, not for approval, but for the lives at stake and the truth she could no longer deny. The decision came like a thunderclap in the dead of night. Despite the higher-up's stubborn refusal, Harris pulled strings through back channels, his unyielding faith in Amara overriding protocol. "We're out of options," he told her in a hushed call, "and you're the only one who can make this work." Amara boarded the transport under cover of darkness, her gear heavy with the ghosts of missions past, heading into the heart of Somalia where the crisis awaited. The deployment thrust her into a merciless landscape. Harsh desert winds whipped sand like daggers across her skin, the sweltering heat a relentless furnace that sapped strength and tested will, turning every breath into a labored gasp. She trekked to her overwatch position, a rocky outcrop overlooking the militant compound, her body aching under the load, but her mind sharper than ever, honed by years of survival.
As she set up the M2010, calibrating the scope with hands that remembered every nuance, the isolation closed in. Memories crashed over her like waves in a storm. James's face, smiling before his final deployment, his voice promising they'd build a life together. "I'll be back for you and the baby," he'd said. But Iraq had claimed him, leaving her pregnant and shattered. Then Maya, her little girl with James's eyes, torn from her arms by a court's cold judgment, the PTSD that twisted her nights into nightmares deemed too unstable for motherhood. Why fight anymore? The doubts whispered, her vision blurring with unshed tears as the heat pressed down. She nearly broke then, collapsing against the rocks, the rifle slipping in her grip, the weight of loss threatening to drown her resolve. What was one more life saved worth when her own had been so irreparably fractured?
But in that abyss, her fingers brushed the eagle tattoo on her back. The inked wings, a fierce reminder of scars, turned into symbols of flight. Her father's words echoed from the letter, a steady drumbeat in her soul. "You don't need their approval. You just can't deny who you are." They revived her focus, pulling her from the edge, reigniting the fire that had made her Ghost Falcon. "For James, for Maya, for Elena," she murmured, steadying her breath, her eyes clearing as she peered through the scope. The militant's compound lay below, guards patrolling with automatic weapons, Ramirez's life hanging in the balance. Harris's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Overwatch in position, assault team ready on your go." The mission began with the first crack of dawn, Amara's finger on the trigger, the world narrowing to targets and trajectories. She fired precisely, one after another. The first guard at 1,800 meters dropped silently, a clean headshot that betrayed no sound. The second at 1950, then the third, each bullet slicing through the wind with lethal grace, her calculations flawless, her rhythm a deadly symphony. 4, 5. The team advanced below, shadows moving toward the breach, relying on her cover. The sixth shot rang true, clearing the path, the militants oblivious until it was too late. Suddenly, on the seventh, her bullet veered off target, grazing a wall instead of the final guard's chest. The radio erupted in shock. "Overwatch? What the hell? That's a miss! Team exposed!" Harris's voice strained with disbelief, the assault halting in confusion, hearts pounding as the risk of failure loomed. Amara's team froze, questioning her skill, the rumor of treason flashing in their minds like a betrayal. But as chaos threatened to unfold, the missed shot revealed its purpose. A figure in SEAL gear, hidden among the shadows, flinched and bolted, his radio in hand, transmitting to the enemy. The twist hit like a revelation. The off-target bullet was intentional, exposing a traitor inside the SEAL team, Petty Officer Klein, whose scorn had masked his disloyalty, selling intel for personal gain. Amara's voice cut through the static, calm and commanding. "Traitor confirmed. Klein's been feeding our moves. Take him down." The team pivoted, subduing the betrayer as Amara adjusted and fired the true seventh shot, neutralizing the last guard with unerring precision. The breach succeeded, Ramirez freed in the ensuing rush, her grateful eyes meeting the horizon where Amara watched unseen. In that climax of fire and revelation, Amara had not just saved a life, she had purged the poison within. Her ordeal forged her new in the crucible of trust and triumph. In the aftermath of that heart-pounding climax, as the dust settled over the Somali compound, the assault team burst through the breached doors, their movements a blur of precision and urgency. Elena Ramirez, the hostage whose life had teetered on the edge, was pulled to safety, disheveled but alive, her eyes wide with gratitude as she was whisked away under protective cover. The militant stronghold fell silent, the guards neutralized by Amara's unyielding accuracy. Her shots the invisible hand that had turned certain failure into triumph. But the true victory echoed deeper. The traitor, Petty Officer Klein, was unmasked in the chaos, his frantic escape halted by the team he had betrayed. Handcuffed and defiant, his confession spilled out under interrogation. Motivated by greed and resentment, he had leaked intel that endangered them all. His mockery of Amara, a smokescreen for his own corruption. The revelation sent ripples through the ranks, vindicating her in ways words never could, exposing the rot within and cleansing the mission's soul. Amara, still perched in her distant overwatch, lowered the rifle with a steady hand. The adrenaline fading into a profound exhaustion mingled with quiet elation. She had transformed in that crucible, from the overlooked cleaner, scrubbing scopes in the shadows, dismissed and demeaned, to the savior whose skill had rewritten the narrative of loss into one of redemption. No longer just a maintenance worker fighting her scars, she was the linchpin, the phantom force that had safeguarded lives and upheld justice. The eagle tattoo on her back seemed to pulse with renewed life, a symbol of her ascent from the ashes of doubt and prejudice. Harris's voice came through the comms, rough with emotion, as the team regrouped. "Lewis, Ghost Falcon, you did it. The hostage is secure, the traitor's in custody. We owe you everything." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken respect, before he continued, his words carrying the weight of hard-won truth. "You're not just Ghost Falcon. You're proof that strength knows no gender or color." Amara closed her eyes, letting the admission wash over her like a balm, healing fractures long ignored. For the first time since losing James and Maya, she felt seen, not as a victim of her past or a target of bias, but as a beacon of what perseverance could achieve. The reward wasn't medals or acclaim. It was the inner peace of knowing she had honored her father's legacy, protected the innocent, and shattered the chains that sought to define her. The extraction chopper's rotors thrummed in the distance. Amara whispered a silent vow. This was not the end, but a new beginning forged in fire. The chopper's rotors faded into the horizon as Amara returned to the familiar confines of the Virginia base, the Somali sand still clinging to her boots like echoes of the ordeal she had endured. Life resumed its steady cadence, the armory welcoming her back with the same sense of gun oil and metal polish that had become her sanctuary. She slipped into her maintenance role as if nothing had changed, tying back her braids, donning the coveralls, and methodically cleaning rifles that others would carry into the fray. The routine was a comfort, a veil of normalcy that shielded her from the world's gaze, allowing her to process the triumph in quiet solitude. Yet beneath it all, the eagle tattoo on her back felt alive, a silent affirmation of the savior she had become, even if the base saw only the cleaner.
Her colleagues, oblivious to the shadows she had pierced, continued their mockery with the same careless jabs. "Back to scrubbing, Lewis? Don't let those rifles get too shiny." One snickered as he passed, his laughter joined by a few others in the break room, their words a reminder of the prejudices that lingered like stubborn stains. Amara met their taunts with her usual stoic silence, her dark eyes steady, but the barbs stung less now, tempered by the knowledge of what she had achieved, for Elena Ramirez, for the team, for the justice she had unearthed in exposing Klein's betrayal. Amid the disdain, subtle shifts emerged, like rays breaking through clouds. Harris, once the catalyst of her unveiling, now carried himself with a quiet respect that spoke volumes. During inspections, he lingered at her workstation, his nods deeper, his voice softer when addressing her. "Solid work, Lewis," he'd say, the words laced with an unspoken gratitude that acknowledged the legend beneath the facade. Dr. Brooks, her steadfast ally, mirrored this reverence, slipping her a warm coffee during shifts, her eyes conveying solidarity. "You've got more in you than they know," she whispered one afternoon, a gentle squeeze of Amara's shoulder, sealing their bond. These quiet gestures were her true reward, affirmations that her strength had rippled outward, touching those who mattered. But as days turned to routine, a mini twist arrived in the form of the official report. delivered in sterile memos that circulated the base. It credited the SEE team alone for the daring rescue, praising their valor while erasing Amara's name entirely. Her pivotal shots, her intentional miss that unmasked the traitor, reduced to footnotes in a narrative that preserved secrecy over truth. The injustice twisted in her gut, a familiar echo of being declared dead years ago, her contributions buried to protect the machine. Yet in that erasure, Amara found a bittersweet peace. It reinforced the Thamlanghishin her father had embodied, allowing her to remain hidden, her purpose deeper than any accolade. As she polished another scope, reflecting on James and Maya, she knew the road back wasn't about glory. It was about carrying on, stronger in the silence. As the days blended into a rhythm of quiet endurance, Amara carried the mission's echoes in her heart, the official erasure of familiar veil that protected her hard-won peace. One evening, after a long shift in the armory, where the mockery had dulled to background noise and Harris's respectful glances had become a subtle constant, she returned to her quarters under a canopy of stars. There, tucked under her door, waited a sealed envelope, plain and unmarked, its presence stirring an inexplicable flutter in her chest, like a whisper from a lifelong silenced. With hands that had steadied rifles in the face of death, now trembling slightly, Amara slit the seal and pulled out its contents. Inside was a photo of her daughter, Maya, now older at 10 years, her smile radiant in a school portrait. Those eyes, so like James, brimming with an innocence Amara had fought to preserve. Clipped to the photo was a note, written in a child's careful, looping handwriting. "Mom, I know. I'm proud of you." The words hit like a gentle wave, washing away years of separation and sorrow, revealing that somehow, through the veil of her death and hidden deeds, Maya had learned of her mother's unyielding spirit, the sacrifices in Afghanistan, the silent heroism in Somalia, the battles against doubt and loss.
This was her true resurrection, rising not just from the ashes of battle where she had been vindicated as Ghost Falcon, the savior who exposed treachery and saved lives, but in the sacred realms of family and legacy. No longer defined solely by the scars of war or the prejudices that sought to diminish her, Amara felt whole. Her father's lessons embodied, James's love honored, and Maya's pride a bridge to the future she had feared lost forever. Tears streamed down her face as she clutched the photo, a profound joy blooming amid the pain, affirming that her strength had rippled beyond missions and medals, touching the heart of the one who mattered most. In that moment, under the quiet Virginia night, Amara was reborn, her dual worlds converging in a testament to enduring love and unbreakable will. In the gentle glow of dawn at the naval base, Amara Lewis resumed her familiar role, her dust cloth once again gliding in slow, methodical circles across the rifle scopes, each pass a quiet meditation on the life she had reclaimed. To the outside world, she was still the maintenance specialist, the unassuming woman in coveralls who kept the weapons pristine for others to wield. But the audience knows the truth. She is the hidden soul behind impossible missions, the Ghost Falcon, whose precision had shattered chains of betrayal and freed the captive, her legacy woven into the fabric of lives saved and injustices defied. No fanfare marked her return, no titles bestowed upon her. Instead, she carried the elixir of her journey, an unbreakable spirit, fortified by her father's wisdom, James's enduring love, and Maya's proud gaze from afar. The eagle tattoo on her back, once a cover for scars, now soared as an emblem of her profound transformation, reminding her the true strength isn't in titles, but in standing up, breaking barriers, and protecting what's right. As she worked, reflecting on the daughter who knew her heart and the allies who saw her worth, Amara found a deeper purpose in the silence, a balance between the shadows that protected her and the light of service that defined her. Her story, one of quiet heroism and resilient grace, whispers to us all. Do you believe silent heroes still walk among us,
Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know where you're watching from, perhaps among them.